Hello, and welcome back to Codex. Today we're going to be talking about the somewhat new, still at this point, weapon Tenet Glaxion that I recently got
It is
and
reminds the
slapped a few formers
operator
on.
to take time for
Go ahead and show you the
themselves.
build I'm using here.
Pressure creates
I did go with
diamonds,
a
yes, but
magnetic
it also
progenitor
creates rubble.
Glaxion that allows me to use a corrosive radiation build via the two corrosive mods and then radiated reload, which in total, since the weapon comes with cold, and I got a progenitor of magnetic means that it's cold, radiation, magnetic, and corrosive all in one build. The reason why that's good is because since that's four different unique status types from this specific modding combination and progenitor combo, that's 320% damage from the galvanized aptitude plus 80% damage per unique status type, and that's 8 times 4, so 8, 16, 24, 32, 320% damage, which is pretty good. Another reason that that's good is because since I'm getting a decent chunk of actual base damage from this, and it has base cold damage on it, I feel that you can use primary frostbite on this instead of merciless, for example. Primary frostbite gives you um, critical damage and multi-shot, and there's two things that's nice about this. One, obviously, just it being crit damage and multi-shot is nice. I believe it's 120% crit damage and like 90% multi-shot when it's fully stacked up, because it's 3 times 40 and 2.25 times 40, so I think that's 120 and 90. There's a good amount of crit damage in multi-shot, and that also, it stacks on cold procs, which means that even if you're doing a super high-level mission to where, the enemies have a lot of health, you don't have to worry about getting kills up front to stack on Arcane that require kills to trigger like Merciless when you don't have stacks already active, because this procs off cold effects and not actual kill. So even if you're like, oh, I'm 3 hours into a mission, these enemies are kind of hard to kill now, and you haven't used your Glaxion for a while, whenever you do whip the Glaxion back out with this on it, you'll be able to immediately get back to your full damage bonus thanks to that. Doesn't matter how tough they are. I am using Revenant for this showcase here just to make sure that I'm not using any frames or any buffs that'll buff the weapon. So, like, just using a general Revenant build. I do have Nourish on, but I won't be using it during the showcase. I mean, I will use it just to show you what the weapon is like when it's also buffed, but I want to bring a frame that can just survive, basically, and show you just the weapon itself. So there's no Avenger or anything on there. I won't be using any abilities to buff the weapon, and it'll just be the weapon itself. One thing that would buff this weapon greatly is any frame where you use Arcane Avenger, like the Arcane Avenger combat discipline, trick, like I showed you in. Actually, I didn't put that in my Nezha video, did I? Because that was just for new players. If you use combat discipline, it was my Saren video. That's what it was in. If you use combat discipline and Arcane Avenger together, it gives you super reliable uptime on Avenger. This weapon with critical delay only has 60% crit chance. So if you used Avenger, that would take you to 105%. So getting that, going from critting 60% of the time to all the time is a enormous damage increase. And the reason why my crit multiplier says 6 to 4.8, by the way, is because I have Tenacious Bond on my companion. I'm not going to change that because I think everyone should be using this, basically, and it's not hard to get. This is just a free 1.2x crit multiplier, so that's why it says what it says in the weapon here. It's saying that it's basically saying that my actual crit multiplier with just Vital Sense would be 4.8, and because of the Tenacious Bond, it's 6. So it just always shows you the difference. It's actually going to be higher than that since this has crit damage on the Arcane here, so it'll go even higher, which is nice. The reason I'm using Prime Shred over something like a Vile Acceleration, for example, in case you're wondering, because it's like, Vile Acceleration is 90% fire rate. This is only 55. So obviously, Punch Through for the most part is always good whenever you're doing any missions that have any like enemy density, like a Steel Path Survival, for example, where you can get some value out of hitting multiple enemies at once, basically applying the weapon's DPS to multiple enemies simultaneously. But specifically on beam weapons, punch through is amazing because, or chaining beam weapons rather, because when you punch through an enemy with the main beam and you hit a secondary or tertiary enemy and so on, every enemy that you hit with the main beam can start a new arc chain of however many links the weapon is able to do. So the Glaxion can chain to, it's either 3 or 4 people, for example. If I punch through And that chaining only occurs from the main beam. So it's like, that's the cap of how many enemies you can hit. But if you punch through the main person and hit a secondary person behind them with the actual main beam again, then that secondary person will again arc off and hit more enemies. So it can massively increase your total chaining DPS. Let's go ahead and do a mission, and we're going to show what that's like. I'm just going to teleport into the mission there, and I will see you when we arrive. Alright, we are here in the Killer Fortress on Steel Path. I have my Mesmer skin up just so that it won't die, but I'm not going to pop Nourish right away. We're just going to see what the weapon alone performs like against level 130 to 140-ish enemies on Steel Path. Grenier here. Well, my cap procced the extra crit, so I'm going to do a lot more damage than it actually does here. So here's what it looks like when your cat gives you orange crits. Yeah, it's it turns out going from occasionally yellow critting to always orange critting is a large damage increase. Thank you for that wonderful experiment, Smita. Who would have guessed, honestly? Who would have guessed? As you can see, the chaining potential is definitely nice. Also, this beam weapon has either the longest or one of the longest ranges of any beams in the game at 30 meters, I believe it is. So you definitely won't have range issues for the most part, especially if you decide to slap the Sinister Reach mod on top of that in the Exilus, which adds another 12 meters, I believe it is. But given how long the main beam already is compared to most, you probably won't need to do that, and you can just stick to Vigilante supplies for the occasional crit bonus. That's why you see I'm occasionally orange critting here, or I was red critting when my cat was proccing, because even though I don't have crit chance over 100%, the effect of the Vigilante mods is that every time that you crit, it has a chance to upgrade the crit tier, basically, so going from yellow to orange or orange to red, and so on. Yeah, so now this is just the weapon on its own. And, oh, you know what? You know what? You know what I do have on my Revenant, though? Is I have Emerald Shards on. So, it turns out this is actually a showcase of how good it is to use a weapon that rapidly procs Corrosive with Emerald Shards, which takes all of their armor off. So, we are going to go ahead and fix that mistake, and I'll be back in a moment when I switch to a Warframe that does not have Emerald Shards on. Alrighty, welcome back again to now having a frame on that actually won't buff the weapon. Sorry about that, but at least you got to see how crazy it is when you can take all of their armor off. And as you can see now, it does not immediately evaporate everyone like it does when you remove hundreds of thousands of potential EHP from them having no armor, but it still performs quite nicely. And again, as you can see, I'm getting that full damage bonus basically right away from being able to stack up the Arcane from just getting cold procs rather than having to rely on kills, which is really good for a weapon like this, where, like I said, when you get to the higher levels, you might struggle to get those first upfront kills to stack the on-kill Arcane effects, especially if you're not playing as a Warframe that'll buff you in some way, like having Rhino's Roar or etc. And speaking of buffs, let's go ahead and see how dramatically more potent this is when I go ahead and use Nourish. So I'm going to eat some dudes here. Pop Nourish. So now I'm going to be adding viral damage as well. And as you can see, whenever you pair a viral and corrosive together, it is quite the damaging combination. So not only is it more viral damage, so for one it's just more damage of any type. Then it's specifically viral, which means that you're getting the status effect of viral, which is quadrupling your damage basically, because having a max stack of viral on an enemy is a 325% damage increase. And then, since it's also just one more status effect, that is a further 80% base damage increase from the Galvanized Aptitude mod. So this is multi-stacking its efficacy of increasing your damage from applying viral via Nourish in basically 3 separate ways. Quite good here. go ahead and showcase what happens, what you saw before when I take their armor off. So here's a big group of enemies. I'm gonna spit at them. Now they all have no armor. And as you can see, per usual, they die instantaneously. So I am gonna stay here long enough to where we can get an Acolyte to spawn. And then after that, we will go ahead, probably close the video out. I just want to give you guys a quick showcase of one of the newer weapons in the game. Let's go ahead and pop that nourish again. Myself a little heal there. Go back to murdering. When the Acolyte does spawn in, I won't use nourish or any kind of armor strip or anything. I just want to showcase, like I said, what the weapon performs like at its base with just the build that you put on it. And it should do pretty good. It's got corrosive on it. That is the weakness to the armor type that Acolytes have, so shouldn't be too much of an issue. It's definitely not a bad weapon. Now, I know on the regular Glaxion or the Glaxion Vandal, the ribbon disposition is pretty high. So if it's the same on this, or near the same, because I'm not sure if they made this weapon come out at 0.5, like they do for most new weapons, like new primes, for example. If they did that, then it'll be terrible. But if this weapon has a decent ribbon disposition, similar to what the other two Glaxion variants have, you can get a really strong ribbon for this. I mean, like, really strong. I was rolling ribbons for this the other day to sell, and the stats you could get on it were quite good. You could easily make this build better if you are willing to either buy one or roll one that you already have. Here's the Acolyte here. Go ahead and see how this performs against him. Not amazing against the shields, it seems. Yeah, there we go. Now that we got the shields down, definitely better, as you can see. Let's see what happens if you pop Nourish on just towards the very end of his health here, huh? There we go. Yeah, that's a little faster. Sure. Yeah, so it's not anywhere close to the best at killing them, but like I said, especially if you're playing as a frame that can buff it at all, it's not the worst. Definitely not the worst either. Yeah, this has been just a short little showcase here of the Glaxion Vandal. Hopefully you liked it. I definitely would recommend getting this weapon. It is fun to use. I do like it. And I will say one interesting note about it, aside from its performance, is I really like the noise that it makes, if you guys just listen here.
The raid is off to a successful start.
It's got that cool kind of
When you are ready, go to extraction.
cycling weapon noise. I don't know. I just like that. But yeah, hopefully you guys have enjoyed. Go ahead and grab this weapon for yourself. Let me know how you like it, and I will see you in the next one.